Welcome to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. I'm Amra Paola, writer, teacher and storyteller. Pull up a chair and let's dive into stories about writing, life and lessons learned, sharing wisdom from my armchair to yours. You can find the episode show notes, your free episode handouts and my how-to guides at amrapaolich.com/podcast. And now it's time to dive in. Welcome to Armchair Anecdotes. Today I'm chatting with Paola. She's an Australian indie author just like me, but she crafts urban fantasy mysteries that are set right here in Sydney. So I'm going to have to check these out. She's someone who grew up with a mother who allegedly could see fairies in the garden. I've actually got a story about fairies and my grandmother that we're going to have to talk about. She's written award-winning stories in her 20s. She stepped away from writing for years, but quietly returned to the page like someone slipping back into a secret world. Paola writes the way she lives, with creativity spilling out in every direction. When she's not working on her Green Witch mysteries or drafting a brand new series, she's at the piano, painting with her community group, dancing around the house, or collaborating with translators across the world. How exciting! You've got translations!
I do.
What hooked me is the honesty behind her story. She's writing full-time, and that's the hardest thing she's ever done. Oh, I can't wait to hear about that. Editing drives her mad. Yes, can relate. The messy middle of a manuscript slows her to a crawl, but she doesn't give up. Everyday storytelling is where she feels most by herself. So we're going to dive into the magic of beginnings, the realities of indie publishing, the power of community, and what it takes to create stories that leave readers feeling lighter, comforted, and a little more enchanted by the world. So I just want to start basically with the Green Witch mysteries. Oh, I love paranormal and I'm loving this witches and mysteries. So tell me more about that.
Oh, okay. So very naively, I thought, well, I live in Sydney. I'm an Australian. That's where I'm setting my story. Much later on, by the way, I learned that I should have possibly written in American English rather than Australian English, but too late. It is Australian English, and I put a little exclamation at the front, and no one has complained yet. So there you go. But essentially, I love murder mysteries, and I love urban fantasy. So I combine the two genres into one. Really, it's very much about the murder mystery, but with all the fantasy elements in it. You have witches, you have gargoyles, you have vampires, all sorts of different things. But the mystery itself is solved mostly with smarts, not with magic. So there you go.
Oh, well, see, I love this whole reimagining of like, and the fact that urban fantasy gives you the chance to sort of do so many things and bring in so many of those fantastical creatures. And so that's really fun. That sounds really intriguing. How many books have you got now?
I published 9. The 10th is coming up in another week. So I'm very excited about that.
Wow, that is amazing.
Thank you.
Well, I have a lot to learn from you because I've just launched my crime series, and the first book is out, and I'm actually writing the 5th. Thank you. I'm writing the 5th book.
Okay.
Because I'm like stockpiling them and now I've got them on a schedule. And also because it's my first series, I was a bit nervous. I was like, I need to have them all sort of prepared because it's a big learning curve, isn't it, doing mysteries? Yeah.
Huge.
What are some of your tips?
Okay. I have to confess up front that I made every mistake to begin with out of naivety. But you know what? That was actually an advantage because I kept going and I kept learning. And so I think if I had stopped and gone, I'm not ready, I wouldn't be here now.
Yeah.
But I think the essential thing as a writer is that you have to read your genre and you have to read extensively. You can't just say, oh, I'll figure it out. There are some amazing books out there that give you all the bases to actually craft your own. I'm not talking about imitating, but I'm talking about learning from others, because at the end of the day, you know, the essential plot lines are all very similar. It's your take on things, it's your characters, it's your setting that makes it into the story at the end of the day. That would be the first thing that I would suggest. I would say about everything else, you have to read.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, like is just to love the written word, just to love write. Like, you love the reading, you love, like, you immerse yourself. Like, I get so excited about new books and go around talking to people about them, and I'm like, oh, you must check this one out. I just wanted to, we were touching on earlier in terms of both of us being from multicultural backgrounds. So I'm from Bosnian background and you're from variety.
French on my dad's side, and German and Spanish and Italian on my mum's side. So my daughter has done an amazing job of actually tracing back to the early ages for our family. So
Wow.
yeah, I know.
That's so cool.
It is. She's amazing. She loves it. So research, actually, whilst we on the topic, it's so important. We're talking about the things for writing. It's so important for writing.
Yeah.
And it's fun. You're
Yes.
discovering new things, learning new things. I've learned more about poisons. I'm kind of waiting for the knock on the door from the federal police saying,
Based on your search
Are you-
engine. Yes, I agree.
but it's essential, right? My husband, who's my editor, he pulls me into line often, because he doesn't let me get away with just, oh, it's magic.
Yes, yes.
Which is sometimes when I get exasperated, I just go, it's magic. No. Even if it's magic, it has to have some element of truth, some element of logic in it. So I do that. I do extensive research. Google is my friend. But I also physically go and do that and experience things sometimes myself. And I think it was one of the things we talked about before is me as a writer, or you as a writer, at least for me, I can't divorce myself completely from the writing. The writing is who I am, what things I've experienced or seen or heard or read. Sure, imagination comes into it, but it's all wrapped up in that. So some things are firsthand knowledge, others are research. But I've learned the hard way that even when you think you know something, you still should do some research, because that's when you actually make mistakes. You think you know, and I've made mistakes thinking I know something, only to be corrected. And my readers, some of them are very precise, and they will point out things and they will say, well, actually, but it's great because I'm learning. And that's the thing I love the most about writing is you're learning all the time.
All the time, just new skills, new software packages, new ways of doing things. Even like with the books that I'm working on, I'm like, I thought I was a pantser, but now I'm becoming a plotter, where I'm starting to have like the plot worked out and character sketches worked out and, all of this other stuff. And that has just sort of naturally happened from the first book in the series that was very much based on historical events. And so I had to do a lot of research. I wanted to ask, how much does because I'm writing Bosnian characters, I'm writing, people that are not represented in fiction, that I don't see represented in fiction, and my worlds are peppered with people from multicultural backgrounds like me. Is that something that, happens in your books also? I mean, it is urban fantasy, so, you've got the magical elements too.
It's an interesting question. I write what I know. So instinctively, I think I do put elements in that. I might disguise them as magic or fantasy. So, for example, in the Green Witch Mysteries, she's unique in that her mum is a witch and her dad is an elf. And so she's what I call a halfling.
Mm.
And as such, she's different. She's different to everyone else. She has powers that she's not meant to have, that she's not confident in, that she tries to hide. And so I represent some of that way.
Yes, the themes we bring in.
Yes, and also the conflict between the races. And I bring themes subtle, but I bring themes of racism into it. But I use it as a species, supernaturals against humans or against different supernaturals as well, like against each other. So those themes are definitely in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, like my second series, Sky is the main character. Sky is neurodivergent. So I do explore, she's, a high functioning neurodivergent, but she is. So I explore things like that. And as you know, I also chose, for example, to depict a character with dementia. And the reason I did that is because my dad went through dementia. And having had that experience, it just came out and I wanted to reflect it. And I wanted to, in a way, say, the person is not the illness. And
Yes.
there's still magic in there. There's still a soul in there. And hopefully I do.
Yeah, and I think that sort of stuff, that's what readers connect with. Like, no matter what the genre is, it's that heart that we put into it. And to go back to what you were saying earlier, like, every story's been done in some way. You know, there's that thing about there's the universal stories, the story arcs,
Yeah.
the story, you know, the universal stories, etc. And so at the end of the day, it's just about what have we got in our brains? What have we got through our experiences that we are bringing that is different, that we're reflecting, and that, you know, readers are coming into? And obviously you've got a passionate and committed readership if they're contacting you and telling you things about, you know, what you're doing wrong. I wanted to ask a practical question. This is for myself.
Okay.
How are you tracking your series, you know, continuity and what happened before and who did what? Because
God.
that's where I'm up to now.
Okay, so you talked about you thought you'd be a pantser and then you became a plotter. It's the opposite for me. So in my previous life as a corporate person, I continue to be in my personal life as well. I mean, our household works as a machine. Both my husband and I are very organized, very much into efficiency, things in their place, in the way that they're used. So I had the feeling, or I thought actually, that I would be like that with my writing. And it's exactly the opposite. So when I start writing, and it's interesting for a murder mystery, people always ask me this question. So I have an ending in mind, and I may have a scattering of scenes in my head, but I don't have a plot line. I have no idea what's going to happen. In fact, short of the main characters, I really don't know who the other characters are going to be. They write themselves, they come off the page. And so the way it works for me is I just sit there and write whatever comes out. And at the end of it, once I know who the murderer is, which by the way, I think I may know, but inevitably changes halfway through or towards the last third of the book. And so I go back in one of my edits and I make sure that all the clues are in the right place and pointing in the right direction. And a lot of people are horrified by this, but about a mystery, surely you need to work out each step. And it actually not. If you know at the end of the day, you know how the person was murdered, which I do. So that's something that I do know at the start, or at least part of it. Then planting the clues along the way, it's easy. You may have to tweak here and there in some scenes, but it's not a complete rewrite. And so that works for me. And I cannot there's been a couple of times, I think it happened with one book and maybe a little bit on this last one I wrote, which is I got to halfway and I was blocked. And so I went, okay, I'm going to write a plot line to end it, because I know it. And I wrote this really, really high level plot line and never, ever looked at it again. But that got me going. And I went, okay,
Yes.
I'll keep going. So I can't think like that with writing. It's a
Yeah.
completely different part of my brain and it just doesn't work.
Well, I'm going to be curious to see what happens with this latest book, because sort of the previous ones I knew the mystery aspect. This one, I know the mystery, but I'm like, I might play with who I'm going to make the murderer. So yeah, we'll see where the world is kind of there. So I wanted to talk about, you're now a full-time author, which is absolutely amazing. And this is the thing, I was traditionally published, and had the agent and all of that stuff. And, only like 1% of traditionally published authors are managing to live, write full-time and live off their writing. Whereas in the indie world, it is a lot more common. And so this really is the viable way of moving forward. So can you take us, how did you get to be full-time? What did it take? What are the things that you do to, for the income? And and how has that changed your writing? Because that's the other thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Look, it's grown organically. When I first started writing, again, second time around, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't know where this was going. I just knew this is going to sound so cliche, but I was unhappy at work. I want to say unhappy, not unhappy as in I hated my job or anything like that. I was bored. I'd
Yes.
done it. Everything seemed to be the same. Yeah, sure, it might have been a different regulation, a different software. I was working with a different project team. But at the end of the day, it was deja vu every time I went into the office. And so I knew I needed a change. So the first thing I did, this is before I actually started writing, I talked to my husband and I started going part-time. I needed a little bit of that space to allow the creative side to come out. And I started experimenting with a couple of things. I'm also a painter. So been doing painting for a few years and I love it. And I thought I'd explore that a bit more, which actually came in handy later for the covers and the ads. But that's another story.
We will come back to that.
But in any case, when I started exploring, I went, you know what? I still have this itch. I want to write. I want to write. Do I have it in me to write a full book? Because you hear the stories, right, Amber? You know what it's like. People, and I love this comment. Oh, yeah, I want to write a book. I'll do it one day.
Everybody. And you just look at them and you go, really? You think it's so easy? You can just say it. Like saying is not doing, people.
No.
Doing is doing.
Yes. And so I went, okay. I mean, I wasn't unfamiliar with writing because I had done it earlier. And I thought, if I can write a book, actually, it wasn't even that. I've got these stories running in my head, let's put it, not on paper, on computer. And I just sat down and started writing and writing. And I didn't tell anyone, not even my husband, who's my best friend. And then I got to a point and I went, oh my God, I've written 60,000 words. This is actually a book. And that's when I started telling people. And the reactions were interesting. It was like, okay, this is another experiment. A lot of people went, this is another experiment. You're going through a phase. And a lot of my friends thought I'd go back full time to the corporate job. And I just went, oh, well, I'll keep going. I've got a book. I'll finish it. And I did. And I went, okay, well, I finished it. What's next? So I published. And then I went, oh my God. I then realized how little I knew about the whole thing. And that's when I started the process of getting myself into writing communities online. And I now have a relatively small group of critiquers. We critique each other online, which is a fabulous group, very loyal, very supportive. And that transformed my writing. The most important lesson, apart from read a lot, is you cannot write without others. You just can't. You need someone else's eyes. You know what you're trying to say, not what you wrote.
Yeah. It's very hard to see that external.
It is
have that
very,
external
very
vision of your book. Yeah.
It's very hard. Then I armed myself with all sorts of, I'm technically minded, and my husband is even more so. So I created a website, started getting my newsletter out. I started building, and then I got into Facebook ads. So I did some courses, learned about it, and I went, and I think half a dozen people have read my book, and I had 3 books out by then. And I think most of them were friends and family, by the way. So I went, okay, I think I'm at a stage now where I think I'm ready to advertise and see if anyone else thinks my books are any good. Because, when you write, or for me anyway, I want people to read them and get something nice out of it. Take them somewhere, show them certain things, leave them with hope.
Yes.
And so I want my books to be read. I'm not writing just for me. I am writing for me, but not just for me. So I thought, well, I'll start advertising. So I learned how to create ads. I started testing it, and much to my surprise, I was selling. And I kind of panicked and I stopped. I went, what am I doing? But then little by little, I gave myself confidence. And I've been running ads on different platforms now for, what are we, 25? So for a year and a half. So I do my own marketing. I'm in TikTok, I'm in BookBub, I'm in Facebook ads, and I've sold thousands of books.
Amazing.
And then the other thing that did help, and actually the funny thing is I didn't do it for this reason, but the other thing I did was translate the books. So I did it because of my background, because I was raised in different cultures and I do speak 3 languages and I can order a cup of coffee and a few others. And wanted to share it with those different cultures. Like, I had no clue whether it would actually, they would like it. It's set in Sydney. It's a little bit weird. It's our culture. And I went with French first. So I thought, well, ties, knowledge and stuff. And I put out the book and I started getting some French readers sending me comments saying, I love it. Oh, by the way, here's a little mistake you made. And here's another little mistake you made. And
Wonderful.
it's just, but they were, I had expected them that if I made mistakes, they would be really angry, right? Yeah, that's your expectation. Like I'm mad when I find a typo that somehow, despite all the
Always
process,
slip through.
gets through. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I was devastated. And I did go through one bad experience where I hired someone for German. And German was a hard language for me because I don't speak it. I've started learning it, by the way, because, I need to know a little
Amazing.
bit more about it. And they actually didn't do a good job at all. So I'm now having those redone. I've discovered a new translator and she's wonderful, adorable. And we talk on video and it's fantastic how you develop relationships with these people. And then I said to my husband, in fact, he said it to me, I think, I am a small business. I
You
employ
are.
people.
You are. Absolutely.
And so Germany became slowly, is now on par. No, in fact, I think it's more than the US in terms of my profitability. I've got super fans in Germany, or what you would call super fans, who write to me. And, it's just been the most amazing, amazing experience.
And so you haven't been, because like I'm seeing in the indie world, there's Scribe Shadow, which is
Yes. So
AI.
I do, so I do use Scribe Shadow, but I have human translators on top of that.
And you source your own translators to go through the
Yes.
Scribe Shadow
Yes.
version.
Yes.
And
I
how
do.
have you been finding your translators?
So it's all been through online platforms. So I'll tell you the story of the German one because it's kind of funny. Jana says it was meant to be. I don't know. Anyway, so I put the ad up. And for me, I don't want. I want the best possible quality to go out there. So I was not prepared to just do the translation and let it go like that because I know the AI makes mistakes.
Yeah.
When you do translations, because I speak the languages and it's easier for me to pick it up. But German, of course, I was going blind. So I put the ad up and she answered it. And she wasn't the cheapest. She wasn't the most expensive. It was just sort of in the middle. And there was something about her bio that sort of appealed to me. And so we started chatting. She agreed to take on the job. And then she'd done, I don't know if it was one book or two. And she sent me a message and she said, would you like to meet in Australia backpacking? So she was in Australia when she took on the job. I didn't know this. I went, of course. And so we met up and we chatted for like 2 hours. It was fantastic. She's back in Germany now, but we do talk on video from time to time. So that's how I found my translators and I've
So where
developed a
did you
relationship.
advertise, like a Facebook or Facebook
No.
groups? Or?
So Freelancer and Upwork are my major
Freelancer
tools.
network. Okay.
Upwork.
Great.
It's called Upwork.
Upwork. Okay. Because, it's fabulous how you do those connections because I did my books as audiobooks and developed a friendship with my narrator. And I interviewed her for my podcast and we check in with each other. And so that's the thing, like we're in this world where we're dealing, like, creative people. We want to connect. And I'm actually wanting to, that's going to be my goal next year to translate this series. But because I'm Bosnian, I'm like, I am embarrassed to translate into other languages until I translate in Bosnian.
Okay.
And so I have gone through and used Google Translate because Scribe Shadow doesn't do Bosnian and translated the whole book. And my husband, who's Bosnian born, is going through and editing and correcting. And then I'm going to get someone else I know in the community to proofread it. And then I'm going to publish it in Bosnian because I just know if I try to do another language, I'll have angry people going, really? Really? You're doing this other language but not Bosnian?
But it's not Bosnian. Yeah, it's interesting because I started with French, but I didn't tell the Spanish side of the family because I knew they would react as well and they would go, why aren't you doing this?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, but yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'm also asking for myself, but also that's the wonderful thing about being a small business the way that we are, being indie authors, all of the opportunities we have to, basically, exploit our intellectual
Yes.
property. So
Yes.
one book becomes numerous books.
Yes.
Have you done any audiobooks?
Yes, my one of my closest friends, she's got an amazing, beautiful voice. So she is narrating my books, and she has done 4 in the Green Witch, and she's working on finishing number 5, which is the final book in the series. So I've got people writing to me and saying, "Where is the final book?" But it takes an awful long time to do it and to do it properly. So I'm not an audiobook person myself. So I actually wasn't thinking of doing it, but she offered. And so I went, and it was our third friend. We sort of have, it's a trio of friends. We normally do things together. And he said, no, 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 do it, give these a go. So we did, and it's out there. Just as you say, it gives us the freedom to explore all of these different opportunities that traditionally published doesn't necessarily give you.
No, because if they don't earn a profit, they're not going to
No.
move forward with any of these things. And once they have your rights, you're
Yes.
stuck. You can't do anything
No.
unless and until they, feel like it. Or you try and get some of those rights back, but they do
Which is a nightmare.
they get touchy. They get touchy because my memoir was traditionally published and shortlisted for a prize, and I wanted to do the audiobook and narrate it myself. And he gave me those rights back. And so I was able to do that as an audiobook. But he was like, only the audio. And I went, okay. And so I'm actually just counting down until the 10-year mark when I get the rights back to that book. And then I can, do the different things because it's only Australian. That's the other thing. Like the audiobook gives me the international market,
Yes.
but the paperback is Australian only. Yeah. So, I've slowly gotten back the rights to my traditionally published. And now I'm too wary. I would only do traditional, like where some of those successful authors are licensing certain rights, where, they can do the paperbacks only in Australia because they've got the bookstores and stuff like that. So being careful about what you give them.
Yeah, I've heard some. The interesting thing is in the press, you get almost the opposite story. So every time I see an article like the Sydney Morning Herald, and it says, "Oh, wonderful indie author," and you're halfway through, and they said, "Oh, and I've sold my rights to traditional publisher." It seems to be like the pinnacle, the aim. And I still have people coming to me and say, "Oh, so you're waiting until a traditional publisher comes to you?" My answer is no. Not only am I not waiting, if they do come in, like you say, I'm not going to sell the whole
No, like you would really
set of
be
rights.
looking at that contract with a
Yeah.
fine-toothed comb. When I started indie publishing, I actually created myself as a small press. So I registered my business name and created a website, which is now my shop. And I published my husband, who's also an award-winning short story writer. So I'm like, I am a small press. And so that's how I'm positioning myself, even though I don't have the capacity to publish anyone else.
No.
Because until and unless I am able to do what you're doing, which is the full-time writing
Yeah.
and the income being generated from that, and then being able to take on other things,
Yes.
I am at capacity trying to do everything for myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is very much a full-time job. Um, it's more than that. I went through a period when I first started doing translations where I was working 16-hour days, 7 days a week. My daughter still says, "Oh, Mum, you're working harder, than you did before." And it's like, yes, sweetheart, but I love it. But I have pulled back because you do have limits. You need to be rested, you need to be in a good position and in good health, and you can't just work stupid hours all the time. So I've learned to manage my time better.
But also now you've got that where you've diversified your income, you diversified your income streams, and the fact that you've learnt Facebook ads, you're presumably doing Facebook ads in all the different
Yes.
countries that you've
Yes,
got the
I
books in. So, it's that wonderful thing of being able to have that set up now that ecosystem where it's I don't know, you sort of figure out flows, and that's what I'm figuring out now. Like at first, every new thing that you do is just terrifying and
Yes.
exhausting.
Yes.
Even this
Yes.
podcast, I only started enjoying it like, I don't know, 5 episodes ago. Because it was just so nerve-wracking and so like, oh my God. Whereas now I'm like, I know how to do it, and now I can just enjoy the conversation and just enjoy the moment. And it's the same with the publishing world.
Yes. Yes, it is. You get into a routine, which sounds boring, but it's not. It's more like a process. So write, and I only exclusively write and critique, as well as managing the rest of it. And then I get to a point where I start editing. I'm not writing whilst I'm editing. There might be a small overlap, a couple of weeks, because your brain then becomes this second part and you can dedicate yourself to that. You can't constantly be moving from one thing to the other. It's just,
That's right.
it's too much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that juggling, it's that keeping up. I just wanted to pick up the thread where you were talking about how being a painter helped you with covers.
I guess because you understand paintings, you understand the basics, you understand what is pleasing to the eye, but you also understand elements. So when you look at covers, people go, oh, it just has to be pretty, which was my first thought, by the way. I'll admit, oh, it's
We
pretty, it'll work.
That's right. It's a whole different thing thinking about covers. It's a whole brain thing.
Yes, it is. So it's easier for me to then look at all, which is what I do. So I look at all the similar genres to mine, remembering that I do cross genre, but I actually advertise myself as urban fantasy. I do put cozy in front of it where I can, so people don't expect, gore and violence and all the rest of it, because you get a little bit of that, but I'm not into gore or violence. So I advertise like that. So I actually compare the top or 100 covers that writers are like, and I look at their covers and I analyze their covers. And so you have to be able to dissect the elements on the cover.
You do.
Probably my weakest point is the actual fonts.
Yes.
So my daughter, who's did marketing, not as a career, but as a, when in all the clubs at university and stuff, she did a lot of that. She helped me with that. I'm hopeless with fonts. It's just like, oh, that will do it. No, ma'am.
Yeah. No, because I'm doing my own covers for crime, a landscape now,
Okay.
and the colourful font. So I did like
Yeah.
a lot of research, and I have like stock photo websites
Yeah.
and stuff. And so she really helps me with placement and figuring out, and like I put it together and I start sort of, I have a concept, and then I'm like, which one? And then she's like, no, do this and do that. And so my first 3 covers, I'm so happy with them. And then I had to do the next 3 because the first 3 books are scheduled for publication, and I'm writing book 5. So I'm like, I need the next 3
Yeah.
and I need them to be consistent. And so I just spent, a week playing around, finding different photos, doing things. And I've finally just got them figured out. And I just felt this great relief where I'm like, but I am looking forward to generating enough income to be able to outsource that at some point. Thankfully for this genre, it's easy because it is that just the landscape, whereas for urban fantasy.
Yeah, no, you can't. And to be honest, that would be one of the things I would not want to give up. I really enjoy doing the covers myself. I spend hours and hours on a cover. I take my hat off to any cover creator. They do a fantastic job.
Yeah.
And it is hard work, but I love it. I guess that's the artist in me, and I've got this image in my head, and that's what I want to go for. So that's one thing I would not give up. There are other things that I would love to. Editing is one. But even with editing, you can't as a writer completely outsource it. It needs to keep your style, your voice, your sense in it. So you can't just say, okay, you fix it. It just doesn't work like that. I mean, my husband and I have spent, because he does the final pass for me. So he's done writing studies, and so he does the final editing side for me, and we'll spend 20 minutes arguing over a sentence.
Yeah. There's nothing like doing those sort of collaborative things. Like my husband and I had, when I was publishing his short story collection. Yes, yes, entertaining moments. And then also because I was a writer my whole life, and he sort of came to writing late to deal with some mental health issues and stuff. And so I was like his critiquer at first. Oh, that was fun.
Tough.
Yeah,
tough,
yeah, yeah.
Tough, tough.
And then,
My
and
God.
then it went on the other foot where he was my critic. I think I took it better, okay? I would just like to say I took it better.
Should I ask him?
Yeah, well, might have a different version of events, but I stand by it. But yeah, it's really good when you've got that support system where,
Yes.
and also you do create that ecosystem where, I have a proofreader,
Yes.
who does that. I have a narrator when I'm ready to narrate this series, hopefully. So like you do create, and now I'm going to be doing what you're doing. I'm going to be doing translating, and I know to go to Upwork, was it?
Yes.
Yeah, Upwork to find people to help me, because it really makes a difference. Because
Yes.
I know that Scribe Shadow is supposed to be really good, but it does so
No.
many.
No.
Like
No,
even
no,
my
no.
husband's going through the Bosnian version, and it's like, in our culture, there's the name for the paternal uncle, for the maternal uncle, for the paternal aunt, the maternal aunt. AI doesn't differentiate. And then there's the different ways of saying grandparents depending on your region. It might be Dido, it might be Dedo, it might be, so it's like all these different things. So it just kind of randomly assigns things. So yeah, you really do need that human touch.
No, you do. And some of the fundamentals with the European languages, and this is where I'm lucky that I actually understand it because I do speak others. So they have the formal and the informal. So you have the vous and the tu in French, you have the du and the si in German. The same with Italian and Spanish. They have the vosotros if it's Spain, or the ustedes if it's Latin America. So it's, again, that's regional, right? And even in Spain itself, the way they say one thing versus another. And I actually had a funny thing where my translator in Germany, she did something, and then I give it to one of my superfans first before I publish it. So he goes through it one more time, and he corrected something. And I sent it back to Jan, and I said, "Oh, do you agree?" And she looked at it and she investigated. She said, "Oh, is how we say it in this part of Germany." It's like just this region in Germany, they say it like that. But the rest of Germany, or standard German, they use what my reader said. So, even stuff like that is it's just impossible. But that first translation in German was devastating for me because it made, apart from mixing the formal and informal within the chapter, which is, particularly for the French, is, they have these, and German as well, for that matter. You have ways of talking to people. If you haven't met someone before, unless you're young and casual, you would use the formal. Like
like in Bosnian, if you're speaking to someone and you're wanting to show respect, you speak to them in third person.
Oh, okay.
Do you want this? Like not them, but like, and so you speak to them in a formal way. And then there's a female and the male. So ovoja ambrina olovka, like we change the way that we say the name depending on the object, and then the way that, verbs, feminine and male. Yeah, like it just, and if it doesn't it doesn't know that the name is male or female.
No. And there are some not so funny things, for example, in English. English is a funny language.
Oh my gosh, right? Isn't it? When you've got another language and then you go to English.
Yeah.
And I teach EAL, so I teach students in high school who have been in Australia for less than 7 years. And I actually show them YouTube clips of how English does not make sense. Of the fact that it's an amalgamation of all these different languages. And when you look at some verbs, the regular and irregular verbs and all this, it doesn't make sense.
No.
It does not make sense.
So, for example, take the word, so my Greenwich Mysteries, right? So she owns a landscape nursery business. So in my books, I had nursery. Guess what? In German, it translated that as children's nursery.
Yes, completely wrong. Completely wrong. Yeah.
And he translated bike, which was a motorbike, as bicycle.
Yes. Yeah, there's so many things like you really, it's wonderful that there's this technology now.
Yes.
Because it is much easier, my husband going through and editing
Yes.
the where it's already there.
Yes.
I mean, he's working on it every day, like
Yes.
5 pages, so it is still
Yes.
exhausting. But
Oh,
trying
yeah.
to do the whole
Takes
thing,
ages. No,
yeah,
you can't.
no,
No.
it's still a lot more. So it is wonderful that we've got this opportunity and
Yeah.
this, these tools now. But you can't replace that human touch, and you can't sort of, no.
Not if some people do, but I think it's disrespectful, for my craft. For me, I could not bring myself to put a book that wasn't to the best of my ability in whatever language it is.
I think I'm going to be a bit mean, and I'm going to say people who do are the people who don't have another language and don't really understand
The
what it
subtlety.
means and the nuances of what it means. Because I lived in Bosnia. I was born in Australia, but I lived in Bosnia. I went through the education system. So even though my language skills now are still kind of primary school level and I can speak, read and write, but not fabulous, I am able to see the grammatical mistakes that it makes even at my basic,
Yeah. Yes.
understanding. And so, it just, and then there's just something within you where you're like, I know it's not going to be good. I just know. And you just want readers to have that experience.
Experience, yes.
Yeah, you don't
Yes.
want them to be taken out of the story. And also, what we're doing now with series, it's so important about read through,
Yeah.
where people keep
Yeah.
going.
I had actually a German reader who wrote to me. This is how I found out that the first translation wasn't done properly. So the first proofreading that I did for German wasn't done. He wrote to me a fairly long email, very German. He was in English. He wrote it in English, but it was very German. The Germans are very direct.
Yes.
Which is wonderful, right? Because what you see is what you get. So he said to me that he read my books and he loved them, but he got frustrated with some of the translation and he had to get the English book to be able to figure out what I was saying and could I please, fix it? And so I wrote back to him and I said, I'm really, really sorry. This is what happened. I am fixing it, but it's taken time. It's not a 5-minute job to fix it. And he wrote back to me and he said, thank you. I'm really happy that I wrote to you. I've never done it before. Thank you for the gift, your book, your imagination, your world. For someone like me who's a retired engineer, being able to access these books means a lot. I was like,
It's amazing. You can't, like, that's the thing when you get people, that's why now at the moment it's so frustrating, all those emails from AI generated things where they're trying to get our business. And we get excited when they're like, got the title of our book and we're like, oh, it's a reader. And then they're like, it was so, like all this generic stuff, your book about justice. And all they're doing is picking up words from the blurb. And you're like, really? But when you get that genuine reader who has actually connected, it's everything. It's just everything.
it is. I had the most moving one was a French reader. He said, it was we exchanged a few emails, but it was a long one. And she said, your books helped me get through my morphine patches. She was recovering, but she was going through cancer treatment.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's what books are for us. Like my memoir is about growing up with my mum who had bipolar and about what that meant because, mental illness is really terrible, but in a non-English speaking background context, there's a whole other layer of what goes on with it. And so, writing that memoir was me figuring things out, but I had so many women writing to me who had mothers who suffered from bipolar, and then also men writing to me who connected with the male, with my father and my stepfather's story. And that stuff, that's just, you don't know. Like, that's the joy of putting things out there. We don't know. We don't know what will connect with people, what they will read. Like, even I wrote an article for The Age about menopause and being repulsed by babies. And I had 2 women writing to me, thank you. I deliberately wrote it because I'm like, we need to have menopause on the conversation, on the table. And I was like, I know that there will be people who will be judging me and going, oh, you're horrible. And it's like, no, I am maternal. Thank you. I have a child. I have a beautiful relationship with her, but I cannot look at babies anymore. I was never fond of them, but now there's this whole physical response that occurs. And, you put these things out there because that's what's going on in your head. That's that unique thing that you have that no one else has.
Yes.
Yeah, so I love that. Now, I just sort of wanted to talk a little bit more about lessons learned, because so you've kind of talked about, things. I sort of did want to talk about your typical day. I really think that anyone who does not understand the indie world, I get strange questions sometimes where you can't help get offended. They're like, "Do you edit your books?" Like, of course I do. I am treating this as a small business and with professionalism, and that is what required. So you've gone through in terms of like the translating, like even with the audiobooks, we have to proofread,
Yes,
proof listen to
proof
everything. And
listen. And that's
yeah,
so painful because I'm
it
not an
is.
audio person.
I love it.
I'm
I
not.
actually am starting to
Do
appreciate
you?
and love
No.
audiobooks. I go between both.
Find it so difficult, so much so that I've actually asked my husband.
Yeah, yeah. No, you can outsource that because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, as long as they follow on with the book.
Well, he's read every single one of my books because he's edited them. And he's an audio person and he picks up more things than I do because
Yeah.
I find it really, really difficult to concentrate on audio. Yeah. So
It
that's
is a
just me.
different way. Like I remember the first
Yeah.
time I listened to an audiobook, the first 20 minutes, I was just like really struggling. And then something where I did this switch. And now it doesn't matter to me whether I read a physical book or I listen to an audiobook, the images are there. I still have pictures in my head. And the reason I like audiobooks is when I'm doing boring things, like really
Okay.
boring things. And it's like, I just want to get out of this reality, but I can't read because I'm doing
Yeah. Yeah.
things. That's when. So take me through your typical day or your typical week, maybe. Like,
Okay. So a typical day would be, and I don't distinguish with weekends. So I usually get up at around 5:30 maybe, and I'll do writing things until about 7:30. So I'll my critique, I'll get myself up to speed with different writers' forums because it's important in this business to keep up to date with changes, with all sorts of things that are happening out there. And the forums are fundamental for that. And all the forums that I attend, except for one in the royalty, they're international writers' forums. So and we all support and answer questions when people have questions. So my first bit of the morning is more about that than actual writing. Then I'll go for a walk and a swim. So we go for an hour where we go into the national park, swim along the way, and that's when I do all my plotting. And my husband will talk to me, and I'll go, "What?" And he'll go, "There you go, you're plotting again." Uh, I am. And then I'll come back and then I'll start. If it's a writing period, so I'll go the writing and the edit. So if it's a writing period, I'll sit there and write until about 12:31. I'll then relax and do something else. And then I'll come back and I'll do critiquing, I'll do marketing, depending on what's going on at the time. Because I've got to maintain those relationships with my critiquers. So it's not like I can choose to critique or not critique at a given point, right? So they have their books and manuscripts ready for editing at different points in time. So it's not like I can say, oh, in 2 weeks' time I'll go and critique you. It just doesn't quite work like that. So I make time for that in the afternoon. And translations is another. So, for example, right now I've just finished editing the final manuscript. So that means I'm into translations now. So when you do translations, people have got this image with Scribe Shadow, for example, that you just press a button.
I did. That's why I'm so glad I talked to you.
No, no, no. So we got a system now, and I actually use my husband for this as well. So we have to introduce things like, and this is where Scribe Shadow is better than, say, Google Translate. So what you can do is you create some things like never translate or always translate this way. So if I want, and this is critical for urban fantasy where you've got magical names for things or titles or whatever. And so you want it translated in a specific way. So you put a list of these things in there. With French is tricky because the French separate the dialogue. So you know how we say, in English we will say, "Come on," she said, and then put her hat on. Well, that she put her hat on will have to go on another line, even if she says something else after that. And then that something else needs to go, unless it has the she said or she asked, that goes into another line. So all of that has to be done translation because doing it I've done it in French and it drives me crazy. So it's easier to do in English. So all of that work goes and happens before you actually put the manuscript in. So you need to really know your stuff, and it's also experience. You learn what it translates well and what it doesn't translate well. For example, now I ride motorbike. I no longer do moto or bike, bike,
Yes.
because then it can confuse
You
it.
did,
So you
yeah.
do things like that to try and make sure that it does the right thing. There'll still be errors, but you're reducing them, right? And then you do a check because it doesn't always get it right. So you go, okay, I have, say 40 take majors here. How many technique major do I have in here? Do I have 40 or do I have 39? Okay, what happened to the 40? So, there's a little bit of extra work in there before you can give it to a proofreader. So yes, once you put it in the scribe shadow, it's, 5-10 minutes, but the pre-work and the post-work, it's quite significant. Anyway, so I got sidetracked. So that's my typical day. That's multiplied by 7 days a week. And then there's a period where I just write. So for 2 months, that's what I do. I just write. And then the next 2 months, I'm editing. And so that's sort of and there's a little bit of overlap. That's a cycle.
Yeah.
That's a cycle.
And I think that's the other thing, like there is that view that as indie authors, because, in the traditional publishing world, it's like, you work on one book for 10 years and we've all done it. Like my first book of my series is my PhD book. And so that was 7 years, but I wrote 3 books in those 7 years.
Okay.
But supervisors were like, we're not reading the 3. We're only reading the one that you're submitting. But, like there's that thing of you just keep working on the same thing over and over again. But when you are an indie author, it really is about releasing. It really is about, and if you need to, you go back. If you need to, you go back, you do editing work, you change the cover, you change the title, you rebrand the series. Like, if you've learned something new, you apply it, but you don't learn if you don't move forward.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's how it's been for me. That experience, for example, that first book that I put out, I went back and with everything I'd learned, I rewrote a lot of it over time. So you learn and you keep, sometimes you go back, I changed, when I first did the first cover, it wasn't the right cover. So I changed that and now I'm consistent and I've got a system, but the first cover was wrong. And I had to change it.
That usually does happen for us because we are sort of learning. Like it took me a while with the covers, and even my daughters now, like the first series I did, the young adult series where I got the rights back, she's like, Mum, they're good covers, you really did do a good job, but you're eating so much with these next covers for this series. And that's the thing, like you don't grow by staying still. You only grow by learning. Well, I think that's a great place for us to end. I'm so thankful that you put yourself forward as my guinea pig to try this new software that I'm trying for my podcast so that I can interview more people and just really open it up. But thank you so much. It was just so generous it's really helped me with my next steps and my professional learning. So I thank you so much for that.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. It felt like we were just chatting. So thank you. You made me very comfortable.
Thank you very much. Thank you for tuning in to Amra's Armchair Anecdotes. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and follow for more insights, stories and inspiration. From my armchair to yours, remember, every story begins with a single word.